Marcus slammed his laptop shut and pressed both palms flat against the kitchen table, breathing hard through his nose. The eviction notice had been sitting there for 3 days now, crisp and official and merciless, and no matter how many times he turned it face down, it still existed. 42 days. That was how long he had before they threw everything he owned onto the street. He was 31 years old, trained as an accountant, and he could not account for a single reason why his life had not completely fallen apart yet. The truth was, it already had. He had moved into his grandmother's old house 2 months after her funeral because the rent was zero and his pride was the only thing left he could afford to lose. The house smelled like camphor and old wood and something else he could never name, something warm and ancient, like embers that had been burning quietly for decades. His grandmother, Mama B, had lived there for 50 years. She had raised 6 children in those 4 rooms, buried a husband, survived things she never spoke about, and still managed to press a crisp folded note into Marcus's palm every birthday without fail. He had never known where the money came from. He had never asked. On a Tuesday night in November, Marcus lay on the old couch with his phone balanced on his chest, staring at a bank balance that read $11.57, when his screen lit up with a notification. He almost ignored it, but something made him tap it. A deposit had been made into his account at 3:33 in the morning. $333. From a sender listed only as a string of dashes. No name, no institution, nothing. He sat up slowly. "What in the world?" he whispered to the empty room. He checked again. The money was real. It was sitting right there, reflected back at him in clean black digits. He looked at the time. It was 3:34 a.m. He had been awake at the exact moment it arrived and had not heard a single sound. No phone call, no email, no explanation. He told himself it was a bank error. He told himself someone had transferred to the wrong account. He would report it in the morning and everything would be sorted out. He set his phone down and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then he picked it back up and spent $40 on groceries through a delivery app because he had not eaten a real meal in 2 days. The next morning, nothing had been reversed. The money was still there. He waited. 3 days passed. A week. Nothing. The deposit sat untouched except for the groceries, and Marcus began to breathe a little easier. Then it happened again. 3:33 a.m. Another $333. Same sender. Same silence. Same impossibility. He stood in the kitchen this time, heart hammering in his chest, phone clutched in both hands. He checked every corner of the room as though someone might be hiding there laughing at him. The house was empty. The windows were locked. The old clock on the wall ticked steadily and the night pressed close around him like a held breath. "Okay," he said out loud. "Okay." He did not report it. Over the following weeks, the deposits continued without missing a single night. Marcus paid his outstanding electric bill. He caught up on his car insurance. He bought himself a decent pair of shoes for the first time in 2 years and stood in the store looking at them for a long time before he let himself carry them to the register. He told no one. He walked around with the secret tucked inside his chest like a hot coal, and every morning he woke up and checked his phone first thing, and every morning the money was there. Then the amounts changed. On a Friday night in December, he checked his balance before bed and saw the number that nearly stopped his heart. $3,333. Deposited at 3:33 a.m. as always. He pressed his fist against his mouth and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time without moving. "Mama B," he said quietly, to no one, to the walls, to the warm ancient smell of the house. "What did you do?" He found the journal 3 days later behind a loose board in the back of the bedroom closet. It was small and leather-bound and the pages were brittle at the edges. His grandmother's handwriting was careful and deliberate, each word placed like it mattered. He read it standing in the closet with the flashlight on his phone, and as he read, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Mama B had made a covenant. 40 years ago, after his grandfather died and left her alone with 6 children and no money and no plan, she had prayed for 3 days without stopping. On the 3rd night, something answered. Not God exactly, she wrote, or maybe yes, through something ancient that God had set in place long before she was born. An ancestral force, a guardian spirit tied to the bloodline. It had come to her in the form of warmth and stillness and a voice that was not a voice, and the agreement was simple. The wealth would flow. It would come steadily and it would grow. But it was not for hoarding. It was not for vanity. It was to be moved like water, from the source through her hands and out into the lives of others. The moment it stopped moving, the covenant would respond. Marcus closed the journal. He stood very still. Then he booked a flight to Cancun. He told himself he deserved it. He told himself he had suffered enough, scraped enough, apologized to creditors enough for one lifetime. He packed a bag, locked the house, and got on the plane with a balance that had now climbed past $40,000 over 3 months of nightly deposits. He ordered a drink on the flight and looked out at the clouds and felt, for the first time in years, like a man in control of his own life. He landed, checked into the hotel, and opened his banking app out of habit. There was no deposit. He stared at the screen. It was 4:15 a.m. local time. He checked the transaction history. Nothing at 3:33. Nothing at all. He put the phone down and picked it up again. Still nothing. He told himself the time zone had confused it, that it would show up in the morning. But in the morning there was only one transaction in his history he had not seen before. A single line of text where the deposit description usually appeared as a string of dashes. This time it read, clearly and plainly, as though someone had typed it directly into his account, "You were warned." Marcus came home 2 days early. He did not tell anyone about the text in his transaction history. He could barely bring himself to look at it. He threw himself back into the rhythms of the house, sat with the journal again, read it more carefully this time, and began to understand that his grandmother had not simply been a religious woman. She had been a steward, a vessel, and the spirit had been patient with Marcus because of her. But patience was not the same as tolerance. He started giving. Quietly at first, nervously, the way a man tests ice before he walks on it. He paid his neighbor Ms. Gloria's water bill because she had mentioned it was overdue. He sent money anonymously to a family from his church who had lost everything in a house fire. He funded a young woman from the neighborhood through her last semester of nursing school. And every morning, without fail, the deposits returned. Bigger each time, as though the spirit was nodding. But his cousin Derek had been watching. Derek had seen the new shoes. He had seen the car payment disappear. He had noticed the way Marcus no longer flinched when the check came at dinner, the way he had stopped making excuses. Derek was sharp and Derek was hungry, and one evening he sat across from Marcus at the kitchen table and smiled the kind of smile that meant he already knew something. "You want to tell me what's going on with you?" Derek said. "Nothing's going on," Marcus said. "Brother." Derek leaned forward. "I've known you since we were 8 years old. Nothing looks very good on you right now." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. The house was quiet around them. The old clock ticked. And somewhere beneath the floorboards, or behind the walls, or in the air itself, something seemed to go very still. "Leave it alone, Derek," Marcus said softly. "Please. Just leave it alone." Derek smiled wider and said nothing. But his eyes said everything. In the spirit, Marcus realized with a cold certainty settling into his bones, had heard every single word.